if I was a FedEx and I needed to pave every single road that I was going to deliver packages to, and then UPS, you said that I had to pave every road that I was going to deliver package to, and then the Postal Service, the same thing. You would say you're insane, you're crazy. Why would you do that? And the fact that we're kind of going down that type of path right now on UAS, you'd go, well, that's insane. Why would we do that?
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 301. Are we close to seeing drone highways in the sky? For that question, we head to North Dakota to talk to Nicolas Flom, Executive Director for the Northern Plains Unmanned Aircraft Systems Test Site. The Northern Plains UAS Test Site was designated by the Federal Aviation Administration to conduct critical research into the certification and operational requirements necessary to safely integrate UAS into the national airspace. Recently, the Northern Plains Test Site unveiled Vantis, a platform set to become the nation's first statewide network for drones. Think of it as a highway in the sky for UAS. Prior to becoming the executive director, Nick was the director of safety responsible for chairing the Independent Safety Review Board for the test site, implementing their safety management system, and ensuring that safety is the test site's highest priority. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Nick talks about the Northern Plains UAS test site, the Vantis UAS system, and how it will safely open the skies to unmanned vehicles. But before we hear from Nick, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have an idea for a great show and want to share your experience, please contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. So let's learn how Vantis will open the North Dakota skies to UAS operations with Nick Flom of the Northern Plains UAS Test Site. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Nick to introduce himself.
Nicolas Flom, I'm the Executive Director of the Northern Plains UAS Test Site. I have a couple different roles with that. One is running the test site, which, interestingly enough, at the end of this month will be the year 7 of the selection from the FAA, which is pretty incredible. And another one of the major initiatives that the state of North Dakota has tasked me with is the development, deployment of our statewide UAS network that we have branded as Vantis.
We'll dig into Vantis shortly, but for those unfamiliar with the Northern Plains UAS test site, can you give us a short description?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at the beginning, it was a congressional mandate to the FAA back in 2012 saying, drones are coming and we need to make sure that we have a way to integrate them with other aviation, manned aircraft. And so what did that really mean? From my standpoint, it meant, working with private industry on enabling drone operations. Again, like I said, going back 7 years ago, we didn't have Section 333s, we didn't have Part 107, we didn't have, a lot of the regulatory component that was in place. So I'll say that the UAS test site program has helped shape that through both working with private industry and then also, working with our federal partners like both the FAA and NASA on some of their UAS traffic management programs over the years. And it's been a great relationship that we've been able to kind of bridge between the regulator and industry.
So let's talk about the new initiative. It's called Vantis. What is it?
What it is, it's years of seeing what the challenges of flying beyond visual line of sight are, what are some of those major barriers, and what could we do to make it more efficient. And by efficient, I really mean by lowering the barrier of entry. And the major component that we've seen by working with our own partners that have wanted to fly beyond visual line of sight or watching the rest of industry there's some pretty heavy investments in infrastructure that need to be put in place. And that's really what Vantis is. It's that infrastructure component, remote infrastructure that it would include the surveillance that's required for beyond visual line of sight, the command and control, and putting those together and networking them into a mission and network operations center that is a reliable source of information, that can get the appropriate FAA approvability tied to it. So, from my standpoint, it's an infrastructure initiative that multiple users can use to enable your more advanced UAS operation.
What will it allow operators to do?
One of the challenges that a UAS pilot needs to make when they're flying beyond visual line of sight is how are you going to see the other manned traffic out there? So this is going to have, the surveillance equipment, if it's radars, if it's ADS-B, if the traffic happens to be cooperative. It's that source of information. Another source of advanced capability is the command and control of the UAS, where putting multiple C2 radios out there, establishing a ground-based terrestrial network can allow for longer range flights. So you're not just tied to the radio line of sight between your own ground control station and the UAS, which a lot of operations look like today.
Is it a demonstration of the network, or is it a rollout of something that's already been tested in North Dakota?
I'll say this is not a development project. This is a commercialization project. This is something that we've had partners over the years, look at various components of this through the University of North Dakota, working with private industry companies like L3 Harris. They've been able to look at, what does this type of infrastructure look like? What does installing these different types of radios that can be, work together to enable more long-range flights? Taking a lot of those research components and, turning it into a commercial product.
How's it going to be built?
It'll be in phases. And, the way that I like to describe this is, first off, it's a network that where we choose to go is we want multiple users to be able to use this single network. So we're going to go where there's users and use cases that support it. The initial rollout is in Western North Dakota, really two counties out there that are in the heart of the Bakken oil formation, which is the heart of our oil and gas industry. North Dakota happens to be the second largest oil producing state in the country. So there's a lot of need in the oil and gas industry out there that could benefit from UAS. Additionally, it's remote out there. So we have challenges with logistics, rural health, all things that could benefit from these more advanced operations. As we build out what we're calling our key site, the area where we're going to do our initial deployment, which is in that western area. From there, we're looking to continue to expand across the state. I think about it the same way that a cellular company like Verizon rolled out their network. Their intention was not necessarily to have the entire country covered in red of coverage area. It was to have the entire country covered in red where there were users that would use their system. And, we're really taking that same type of rollout mentality.
Who's charged with building the system?
We have funding that's come from the state of North Dakota. And part of the first things that we kicked off when the funding was put in place is we put out a competitive RFP to bring on system engineers, system integrators to support the actual build out of the network. Through that competitive process, we did a down select to 3 system integrators, being Collins Aerospace, which is now a Raytheon company, L3 Harris Technologies, and Thales USA. From our standpoint, they're the best in breed. Anytime that you're talking about aviation infrastructure, you jump onto a manned airplane, probably one way or another, you're touching all 3 of their systems and networks. So, people who understand, aviation infrastructure was a really important component to help us with the build out of the network.
Can you talk about how it's funded?
In this case, it was general funding that was initially put into our governor's budget. The state legislature supported that amount of appropriations. And really, the intention of it is, this is an investment for the state. We look at UAS and technology as an economic driver for the state. The state of North Dakota is very commodity-based when it comes to our reliance on our budget with both agriculture and energy. And, having a way to help diversify the economy, through UAS type of investments is where this came out of. So at this point, it's state supported. We, in the future, I can absolutely see, public-private partnerships being able to help grow this.
For those UAS operators that want to take advantage of the system, what do they need to do?
That's a great question that we're working in real time right now. We know that, this is I'll say a first of its kind, type of operation. As the system is being rolled out, we've been working very closely, with the FAA on all of this and, coming up with the procedures to what we're calling, onboard a new operator to determine, what are those specific training requirements going to be. We're getting a better idea through the system integrators on the equipment that they're deploying on what a UAS would need to be equipped with in order to operate on the network. And also working with UAS manufacturers to, at some point, be in alignment, so that the type of equipment that we're installing is the same type of equipment that they're, already having, roll off the assembly line, because it's something that it meets FAA standards. It's, it's part of the certification process. Then at the end of the day, you're not doing anything special. You're just complying with, the way that the industry is rolling out their certified equipment.
And speaking of the FAA, how does Vantis fit in with their regulatory requirements or waivers?
So we're in a very fortunate position. So the state of North Dakota, through our Department of Transportation, and really with the test site, leading the effort, participating in the FAA's UAS integration pilot program. That program sunset late October, and then on the very next day, they initiated a new program that they're calling Beyond. And the Beyond program is in great alignment with the goals and objectives of Vantis. The shared vision is, scalable, repeatable, economically viable types of operations. And we know, in partnership with the FAA, that the detect and avoid, the surveillance component, it has to be validated. That's going to be something we're going to be doing on the network. The command and control has to be validated. We're going to be doing that on the network. And we need to have operators that can meet the appropriate regulatory approvals. That really is in complete, alignment and lockstep with really the vision of the FAA, over the next 3 years. So in a lot of ways, the stars align very well with all of this timing.
So to summarize, and using this as an example, a UAS operator that inspects oil rigs would be able to inspect several over an area without being able to see the drone. Instead, the operator would rely on the system for the situational awareness.
You got it. Yep, absolutely.
When do you feel the first phase will be completed?
We just finalized some of our critical design review of actually finalizing everything that's going to be, installed, and we're still on pace for spring of 21 to have some of those, initial operations going up. Some of the initial operations are going to be validating the system, probably followed by some operations that could, directly support our state agencies, like our Department of Transportation. Are going to be somebody who's going to, of course, benefit from this, our public safety components. And then, also be able to have some of our initial use cases to support, private industry. But, looking to have things up and going by this spring.
Is the system going to need a lot of antennas? I mean, will people look out across the North Dakota landscape and see it dotted with antennas everywhere?
One of the things that we wanted to do when we started this initiative is leverage as many, state assets that were already available to us. And one of those assets that the state has is our Department of Transportation actually operates a state radio network. And a part of that radio network, they already have antennas installed that they have their radios installed on. What we're doing is we're actually using that same, vertical infrastructure of their antennas to install our equipment on. So, trying to not build new things and, leverage existing infrastructure is the goal. So you're right. There's already enough towers out there between cell phone towers, TV towers, and, radio towers that really trying to make sure that we don't have to put up another one.
Are they capable of being installed on top of or along with the new 5G antennas?
That's kind of, I'll say, secondary. The more that I'd like to be able to do is our state-owned towers, because one of the value adds is that they already are connected into a backhaul network that kind of ties up the entire network together. And all of the state-owned facilities already have a drop for that backhaul network. Another state investment that we're going to be able to leverage is using their backhaul network. So yeah, we could use commercial towers, but our number one thing that we're going to try to do is at least start with state-owned infrastructure.
Plus, you don't have to pay for it; it's already owned by the state.
You got it.
How will Vantis integrate with the FAA's plans for UTM?
Our goal of this is we want to make sure that this is something that's in alignment with the FAA, and we look closely at the FAA's UAS roadmap for their traffic management, and you start to find what are some of the different features that are included in that so that we're ready to be able to support it all. The way that we're building this out is we're calling it ourselves maturity levels. And as you can imagine, a maturity level, we're starting with 1, which is going to have, I'll call it basic features, tied to it, which is really just what we talked about, the command and control, the detect and avoid components. But then you start going down the line into the second maturity level. And you can start adding in, features like weather or payload data information. So as the system matures, I think that the services that are going to be provided will also start to mature.
Will Vantis connect with existing air traffic control systems?
Where we're starting, the deployment is in uncontrolled airspace that probably doesn't have a big burden put on the existing air traffic control. Things that we will leverage at this stage of the game probably have to do any interaction with air traffic control. However, are looking to leverage some of their capabilities, like their radar feeds, and be able to provide that same type of service into our overall picture of what this could look like. Probably won't be touching air traffic control, but still want to be able to leverage some of their radar feeds and their installed equipment as well.
I guess it gets back to what you talked about earlier, the maturity levels. Because right now, you're focusing on beyond visual line of sight. And in the future, when other airspace issues arise, that might represent another maturity level that you would try to bring into the system. Does that make sense?
It does. And, a lot of those things I think are going to be driven by the alignment with the FAA. What we're really trying not to do is, put additional requirements on the system that, other UAS users don't have to do. Some people would consider burdensome. But the moment that the FAA continues to roll out some of their UTM, I'll call them features or capabilities, Vantis is going to be directly in alignment with that. So, as we look to go into even just to be able to use, land's capability to go into controlled airspace, that's already an existing, I'll call it feature that the FAA can support. That's going to be something that we would already have built into our system as well.
What's the story behind how the system was conceptualized?
I think there's a couple components. One of them was, again, going back to work that we had seen with one of our partners, XL Energy, looking to not use helicopters to do their transmission line inspections, but instead, use a drone to do that. Safer, better imagery, just everything that we know on those benefits. And we saw what some of the challenges were. Another one that we saw just watching, BNSF has been a really forward-leaning entity when it comes to UAS. And again, we saw some of the challenges of scaling their operations. And I looked down a highway in North Dakota, and you think, the Department of Transportation could get a lot of value out of, using drones, but, they need to install this infrastructure in order to do that. And then you look off to the, just off the shoulder of the highway, and there's a BNSF train tracks right there. And that in order for them to do UAS operations, that they need to install their own infrastructure. And then, all within about 500 yards, there's a transmission line. And right now, the state of the industry is each one of these entities would have to build out their own network. And that's probably part because of just the infancy of UAS, but that's not aviation. In aviation, you don't fly into, a Delta airport that's 2 miles away from the United airport. We all land at the same airport, and along the way, we all use the same navigational aids to fly. And, you take all those different components together and you start to see efficiencies. And is an opportunity that we actually saw with, the statewide radio network that the state has, and looking at, how could we, as they look to upgrade that system, what if we just installed some additional equipment as they're making an install on the radio network, and, next thing you know, you could actually have a UAS network put in place. And we have a very forward-leaning, tech-driven governor. We have a pretty rich history in UAS, going back, 10, 15 years in North Dakota. And, just a lot of the stories started to align well for us.
From this point, what do you see as being the greatest challenge that you need to overcome?
One of the biggest challenges is going to be the regulatory approval component of it, because in this fashion, this has not been a traditional way for approvals from the regulator, from the FAA. And I think that we're going to cut our teeth together on a lot of these challenges, but I think that we're going to solve a really major and important, challenge for, not just North Dakotans, but for the entire UAS industry along the way.
Is there anything that we missed that we should talk about?
Although this is a North Dakota initiative, we really feel that this is something that could be foundational, that this is something that is not unique just to the state of North Dakota, and, that other states or entities or cities, municipalities, you name it, could be able to adopt a lot of the same architectural framework in order to support these advanced operations. So, something we're not trying to do in a silo, but definitely something that we think to support the entire industry.
Are you creating any type of knowledge sharing that will open it up to other states?
I'll say not yet. Not that we're opposed to it. I'll say we're still figuring out a lot of things on our own ourselves right now. I can tell you that I do have states that are calling us up that are intrigued and interested. And from that standpoint, more than happy to have those conversations and, again, give the why are we even making this investment kind of, initial discussion, and, where's the value that we see coming out of it. I look forward to eventually being able to, really open up that book and help out others along the way.
If other states are interested in creating a similar system, what advice would you give to them?
A big priority for our governor is a whole government approach. How do we do things more efficiently in our state? And, this is something that can absolutely benefit our internal state agencies to do our government better and really not grow our government, which is important, our state government. You see that initial value add, right out of the gate for the state itself. And then this is an inevitable economic driver, that through efficiencies and, logistics, you name it, this COVID thing has gotten really interesting on, how drones could support these advanced operations that are needed. If it's, bringing a prescription to somebody or some type of medical equipment or whatever it happens to be to someone in a rural location, to have just one less person come into a hospital, that's beneficial. The moving of lab samples, in real time right now, we're talking about the disbursement of, vaccines, all those things can be on the logistical side could be, greatly beneficial to the state and their citizens by implementing, this type of investment.
And for my final question, Nick, what message would you like to leave on what Vantis means to the future of the drone industry?
If I was a FedEx and I needed to pave every single road that I was going to deliver packages to, and then UPS, you said that I had to pave every road that I was going to deliver package to, and then the Postal Service, the same thing, you would say you're insane, you're crazy. Why would you do that? And the fact that we're kind of going down that type of path right now on UAS, you'd go, well, that's insane. Why would we do that? I really look at this, single infrastructure for multiple users. The concept isn't that crazy, but we just needed a kickstart in order to get this deployed. And I think that that's going to make a huge difference for the entire UAS industry.
That's it for episode 301 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Nick Flom of the Northern Plains UAS test site. I want to thank Nick for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Vantis or want to connect with Nick, check out the webpage at npuasts.com. That's short for Northern Plains UAS Test Site. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, But for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.